There is a moment that has probably embarrassed you more than once. A movie scene that shouldn't have affected you this much. A stranger's kindness that brought tears you couldn't explain to anyone watching. A song, a memory, a piece of news about someone you've never met. Someone says something slightly too honest in a meeting, and you feel your throat tighten, and you have to look away, hold your breath, will it back down. And afterward, the quiet shame. Why did that get to me? Why can't I just feel things normally, like everyone else seems to? If this is you, if you have spent years apologizing for your own tears, hiding them, feeling embarrassed by a body that responds before your mind can stop it, I want you to hear something that might be difficult to accept at first. You have not been malfunctioning. What you have been calling weakness is, according to one of history's most uncompromising philosophers, evidence of something most people never develop. Friedrich Nietzsche, a man not known for sentimentality, a man who wrote with brutal precision about strength and weakness, had a far more complicated relationship with emotion than most people realize. He did not believe tears were weakness. He believed the inability to feel deeply was the real weakness, dressed up, in most people, as composure. Today we are going to take apart what it actually means when someone cries easily. Not the surface explanation, the deep one. The hidden traits beneath the tears that most people, including you, have never been told about. Stay until the end. Because the final trait is the one that changes how you see every tear you've ever been ashamed of. 1. You have an unusually thin wall between yourself and the world. Most people move through life with a kind of psychological insulation. A filter that absorbs the emotional impact of what they encounter before it reaches anything vital. A sad story on the news registers, briefly, and is gone. A stranger's pain is observed, processed as information, and set aside. Even significant losses, for many people, are managed at a controlled distance, felt through several layers of protective material. You do not have this insulation, or you have very little of it. What happens around you does not stay around you. It comes in. The grief of a person you've just met, the joy in a stranger's voice, the injustice in a story that has nothing to do with your own life. It reaches you as directly and immediately as if it were happening to you. Nietzsche had a word for this kind of person, though he used it carefully, because he understood how easily it could be mistaken for fragility. He called it being thin-skinned in the deepest sense, not weak but unprotected, permeable, open to the full force of experience without the buffering most people have built, often unconsciously, as a survival mechanism. This is not a flaw in your design. It is the absence of a wall that most people built so early they don't even remember building it, and that you, for reasons of temperament or history, never fully constructed. The wall protects, but it also isolates, and the absence of that wall, uncomfortable as it is, means you experience life closer to its actual texture than most people ever will. 2. Your nervous system is calibrated for accuracy, not comfort. Here is something almost nobody explains to people who cry easily. Your tears are not a malfunction of perception. They are frequently evidence of unusually accurate perception. Think about the moments that make you cry. Often, if you examine them honestly, they are not random. They are moments where something true and significant is happening, and most people in the room did not fully register it. The quiet act of someone's loyalty under pressure. The exact weight of what someone just admitted, buried inside a sentence that sounded almost casual. The full implication of a piece of news that everyone else processed only at the surface level. You felt the size of it, while the room moved on. This is not oversensitivity in the dismissive sense the word usually carries. This is what happens when someone's perceptual and emotional systems are tuned with unusual precision, registering not just what happened, but the full weight of what it means. Nietzsche believed that most human beings live at a kind of emotional distance from reality, protecting themselves from its full impact by dulling their perception of it. The price of this dulling is comfort, but it is also a kind of blindness. You have not paid that price, which means you see and feel things that most people, moving faster and more protected, simply do not register. The tears are not the malfunction, they are the readout. 3. You carry an unusually intact connection to your own history. This is rarely discussed, but it matters enormously. Some people, in order to function, have learned to disconnect from their past pain. Not heal it, disconnect from it. Build enough distance that it no longer reaches them in daily life. This produces a kind of stability, but it is the stability of numbness, not the stability of resolution. The person who cries easily has often not built this disconnection. Their past stays available to them, which means that a moment in the present, a stranger's kindness, a piece of music, a small act of tenderness, can reach all the way back and touch something that happened years ago, and the two moments collapse into each other. And the tears that come are not really about what just happened in front of you. They are about everything that moment is connected to. This can feel chaotic, embarrassing, disproportionate. But Nietzsche would frame it differently. He believed that the person who has not severed their connection to their own history, who carries their full experience rather than amputating the parts that hurt, has access to something the disconnected person does not. Wholeness. Painful wholeness. Inconvenient wholeness. But wholeness. The numbness that lets others move through life without crying often comes at the cost of also not fully feeling the good things either. You have kept both. The capacity for this depth of pain is inseparable from the capacity for this depth of joy. You cannot selectively amputate one without losing access to the other. 4. You have an unusually developed capacity for empathy, and it costs you exactly what it should. This is the trait people praise in others and criticize in themselves. We celebrate empathy as a virtue when we see it in someone helping a stranger, comforting a friend, noticing what others miss. But when that same empathy produces visible tears, in real time, in front of other people, it gets reclassified as weakness. This is an inconsistency Nietzsche would have found absurd. Empathy that costs nothing is not empathy. It is performance. Real empathy, the kind that allows you to actually feel something of what another person is experiencing, has a price. And the price, sometimes, is your composure. The person who can witness someone else's pain and remain completely unaffected has not transcended emotion. They have simply not let the other person's experience fully register. You let it register, which means you actually biologically feel something close to what the other person is feeling. This is rare, and it is not comfortable, but it is the foundation of every meaningful human connection that has ever existed. The friend who can sit with you in your worst moment and actually feel the weight of it with you, rather than offering distant sympathy from a safe emotional distance. That friend, almost always, is someone who also cries easily in other contexts. The capacity is the same capacity. You cannot have deep empathy for others without the same depth of feeling turning, sometimes toward yourself, toward beauty, toward injustice, toward things that have nothing directly to do with you. 5. You have likely been underestimated by people who confuse stillness with strength. This is one of the more painful traits to sit with, because the world, generally, has decided that composure is strength and emotional visibility is weakness. The person who can deliver difficult news without their voice breaking is seen as strong. The person whose eyes fill with tears delivering the same news is seen as struggling. Nietzsche rejected this equivalence completely. He understood that composure can come from two entirely different places. It can come from genuine internal mastery, the rare, hard-won capacity to feel something fully and still choose how to respond to it. Or it can come from disconnection, the absence of feeling anything significant enough to require management in the first place. From the outside, these look identical. From the inside, they are opposites. The person who has never cried in a difficult moment is not necessarily stronger than you. They may simply be feeling less. And you, moved to tears by something that mattered, while still managing to function, still managing to show up, still managing to do what needed to be done despite the visible cost. You have demonstrated something the dry-eyed person never had to demonstrate at all: the capacity to feel something completely and still act. That is not weakness. That is the actual definition of courage that Nietzsche spent his life trying to articulate. 6. You probably hold standards for honesty and meaning that most people have quietly abandoned. This trait explains why certain specific things make you cry, and why those things would not move most people at all. You cry at sincerity, a piece of writing that says something true without irony, without protection, without the safe distance most communication maintains. A person who admits something vulnerable instead of performing confidence. A moment of genuine connection that cuts through the layers of social performance that usually separate people. This happens because you have not abandoned your hunger for the real. Most adults, over time, build an immunity to sincerity. They have been disappointed by enough false versions of it that they have stopped responding to the genuine version at all. Irony becomes the default. Detachment becomes the safe position. Cynicism becomes armor. You have kept your susceptibility to the real thing, which means that when you encounter it, genuine sincerity, genuine vulnerability, genuine meaning, unprotected and unguarded, your system responds the way a system is supposed to respond to something rare and important. It registers, fully, sometimes visibly. Nietzsche held something close to contempt for the kind of person who has become too cool, too detached, too protected, to be moved by what is actually significant. He believed this detachment, often mistaken for sophistication, was actually a quiet form of death, the slow withdrawal from full participation in being alive. Your tears are evidence that you have not made that withdrawal. 7. You have an internal world richer than most people ever access. This is the trait beneath all the others. The person who cries easily is, almost without exception, someone whose internal life is unusually vivid. Their imagination runs deeper. Their memory carries more emotional charge. Their associative thinking connects a present moment to a wider web of meaning that most people's minds never construct. This richness is exactly what produces the tears, and exactly what makes that same person capable of things most people cannot do. Genuine creative work, genuine depth in relationships, genuine presence with people in their hardest moments. The capacity to be moved by something is the same capacity that allows you to move others. Nietzsche believed that the depth of a person's inner world was the single best predictor of what they could ultimately create or become, far more reliable than discipline alone, far more reliable than raw intelligence alone. Discipline without depth produces competent, hollow work. Depth without discipline produces brilliance that never gets organized into anything lasting. But depth, genuine, full, unguarded depth, is the rarer ingredient, and you have it. The tears are simply the most visible evidence of something that operates, mostly invisibly, in everything you do. 8. How to carry this trait without being destroyed by it. This is not a trait to suppress, but it is a trait that requires architecture, or it will exhaust you. 5 principles. Principle 1. Stop apologizing for your tears. Every apology teaches your own nervous system that this response is shameful. It is not shameful, it is information. Receive it as information, not as a failure requiring correction. Principle 2. Build genuine boundaries, precisely because you feel so much. The permeability that lets you feel deeply also means you can be overwhelmed by things that are not yours to carry. Learn to distinguish between empathy, feeling with someone, and absorption, taking on their emotional state as your own. The first is a gift. The second will exhaust you completely if left unchecked. Principle 3. Protect your input. You are more affected by what you consume, news, conversations, other people's emotional states, than most people. This means you cannot consume at the same volume others do without paying a much higher price. Be deliberate about what you let in. Principle 4. Let your depth become your direction, not your obstacle. Whatever you build, relationships, work, creative output, should be built to use this trait rather than around it. The depth that makes you cry easily is the same depth that will make whatever you create resonate at a level shallow people cannot reach. Principle 5. Find the few people who do not require you to perform composure. Most relationships will ask you, subtly, to manage your emotional visibility for their comfort. Find the few that don't. The relationships where you can feel fully, without apology, without management, these are rare, and they are the ones worth keeping. 9. The final truth. Nietzsche wrote that the strength of a spirit is measured by how much truth it can tolerate, or more precisely, how much truth it requires to be diluted, masked, sweetened, attenuated, falsified, before it can be born. By this measure, his measure, not the world's casual one, the person who cries easily is frequently among the strongest in the room, because you are tolerating truth at full strength, the truth of loss, the truth of beauty, the truth of another person's pain, the truth of your own history, fully connected rather than amputated. You have not diluted any of it. You have not built the walls that would make it bearable at the cost of making it false. This costs you visibility. It costs you the easy comfort of composure. It has probably cost you moments of feeling embarrassed in front of people who could not understand what they were watching. But it has not cost you the thing that matters most: your contact with what is real. Most people, by the time they reach adulthood, have traded that contact for protection. You have kept it. That is not the trait of someone broken. That is the trait of someone who never agreed to go numb. Stop apologizing for it. Start understanding what it has actually been protecting, your access to everything true. If this video reached you, if you felt something while watching it that you weren't expecting to feel, that is not irony, that is proof. If you want more content on Nietzsche's philosophy, emotional depth, sensitivity, psychology, and the hidden strength inside what the world calls weakness, subscribe now, because the world needs people who still feel things fully, and you are one of them.